I'd like to introduce this next idea by relating it to something that you're probably more familiar with. Let's consider the square root of 9 times 81. We know that 9 is 3 squared, and 81 is 9 squared, which means the square root of 9 times 81 must be the same as 3 times 9, or 27. And I want to relate that idea, the square root of 9 times 81, to something similar. Now don't get confused, because I'm not changing much. The only thing I'm changing, instead of 9 times 81, we're going to have 9 times x squared. But really the only thing that's different is instead of 81, I have x squared, which means this is the same thing as 3 squared times x squared. And since the square root of 9 is 3, and the square root of x squared is x, the square root of 9x squared must be 3x. Let's look at another one. Let's consider the square root of x to the 6th. Well, here our exponent properties are really important, because x to the 6th is the same thing as x cubed squared. Remember power of a power? And this just must tell us that the square root of x to the 6th is x cubed. Let's look at another one that's similar. The negative square root of y to the 16th. Well, y to the 16th is the same thing as y to the 8th squared. So the negative root of y to the 16th must be negative y to the 8th. Let's consider one more and put all these ideas together. The negative square root of 121 y squared. Well, we know that 121 is 11 squared, so this is 11 squared times y squared, which means we would have negative 11y. Why don't you practice a couple? The first one is the square root of y to the 8th. The second one is the negative square root of z to the 14th. The third one is the positive square root of 16x squared. And finally, the negative square root of 81y squared. Hit pause and try it yourself. Well, let's go through it. We know that y to the 8th by power to a power is y to the 4th squared. So the square root of y to the 8th must be y to the 4th. We know that z to the 14th is z to the 7th squared. So we must end up with negative z to the 7th. We know that 16 is the same thing as 4 squared, so we have 4 squared times x squared in the square root, which must mean that the square root, ignore that, the square root of 16x squared is simply 4x. And finally, we have the negative square root of 81, but 81 is 9 squared, so we have 9 squared times y squared, which means our final answer must be negative 9y. In our final video, we'll extend this idea one step further.